homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. I am getting ready to go out to my greenhouse to check on the seedlings and uncover everything that I covered up last night and turn off my heater. And I thought I would talk to you a little bit about greenhouses. So this is my Harbor Freight 10 by 12 greenhouse that we built in 2014. And we've done a lot of repairs to it since, but it's been up since then. We built it on a wood frame that was treated lumber in order to maintain the bottom so that it didn't rot out. And what I like about this greenhouse is the walls are double paneled, so they're made like you would make cardboard. They've got two different layers, and that does a lot to help with heat retention. The single panel or the plastic 6 mil, they just don't hold the heat as well. But honestly, my biggest message here and the reason I'm making this video is because unless you have supplemental heat or you're building into the ground, no greenhouse holds heat that well. You're asking tiny, thin pieces of plastic to keep the outside and not inside. And that's a pretty big lift. So over time, we have replaced the entire roof of this. You can buy this type of plastic from Home Depot. It's not inexpensive, but we have replaced the whole roof because the UV was really starting to degrade it. And actually, you can tell which parts of this we did one year and which parts of this we did the next year, just by looking at that. The 3 in the center there were last year. This panel on the side here was last year, and you can see how yellow the rest of this is getting. So UV over time, you know, it's a 10-year-old greenhouse. UV over time is just going to take its toll. This whole greenhouse has been reinforced. You see these metal screws there. That is to help hold these panels on. The panels are only held on by these clips. And these clips, if you get wind, they are not enough. And so one of the pieces of advice that we had when we built this was order an extra bag of clips, put double the amount of clips on that you think you need, and then reinforce it with screws as well. And these have a little bit of a gasket underneath, and so it helps protect from going through the plastic. You can see this is what happens as these start to age, is this plastic just gets really thin and it starts to get brittle and it starts to break. And so that's the bad part of this. But it's been a decent greenhouse. I've gotten a ton of seedlings out of it. I'm sure I've paid for it in the seedlings that I've sold over the years. Let's go look at the inside. One of the things that I like the very least about this greenhouse is the door system. So this is sliding barn door style doors. And if the building isn't exactly square, or if it settles at all, you get this issue, which is this door doesn't fit evenly anymore. You can see what it looks like on this side, where the bottom is where it should be, and the top is way over. So the whole building is slightly skewed. And this could have been solved if they had just made the doors an extra inch longer on both sides. But instead, it's a very precise fit. Notice this big spring clip. These doors do not stay closed well if you get any kind of wind. I also have bungee cords. And if it's going to be a windy day, I actually clip bungee cords in both directions so that it doesn't blow the doors off. Any kind of wind getting into this thing will blow the panels out from the inside. And so it is absolutely critical that you keep wind from getting into this greenhouse at all costs. And so I have plans to someday rebuild the doors. I may just do a different greenhouse altogether instead. But yeah, the doors, they stick and they're annoying and I hate them. So don't recommend the doors. Rest of the greenhouse is pretty decent. You notice I have right now a small heater in here. This has no open coils, and so I'm not accidentally going to light anything on fire. I only do this when I think it's going to be cold enough that it's going to warrant it, because turning this on is basically like trying to heat the outdoors. It will help bump the temperature up in here a couple of degrees, you know, maybe as much as 10 depending on the day, but it's wildly expensive to do that. And so most of the time I don't have supplemental heat in here. You can see right now, I have some very old Agribon on here. We tend to be about 5 degrees colder than whatever the predicted temperature was. And the predicted temperature last night was 38, which would have meant 33 here. This greenhouse tends to run about 5 degrees warmer than the outside temperature. But, you know, predictions are not always reliable. And so I just, to be safe, I went ahead and covered everything, including my tomatoes. This is all my tomato babies. Just to be on the safe side, tomatoes and peppers don't really like to be under 40 degrees. And so regardless, I figured it would be good to give it a little extra heat last night. It turned out to not get that cold. I think we only got down to 38. I really need to replace this row cover. It's super worn out and trashed. But it's expensive and it tears easily and it doesn't last very long, and I resent having to buy more, so I haven't done it. Here are all the tomato babies. They're doing pretty good. They were in my walk-in chamber for a week or two until I transplanted everything up. So they haven't been out here that long, but they're not super happy about 40-degree nights. The other big recommendation I have to everybody who gets a greenhouse is get some kind of a min-max thermometer. You can buy ones that are attached to an app on your phone and rely on Wi-Fi. This one is all manual. I happen to like it because it works if the power goes out, it works if my phone's not working. And so it's a loop of mercury in here. And this side shows you the minimum. This little blue thing gets pushed up. That'll show you the minimum temperature. So last night it was 45 in here with the heater going. And then it'll show you the current temperature on this side and then the hottest it got. Right now it's as hot as it's gotten today. We're still pretty early in the day. And then to reset it, you push this red button and that blue should drop back down onto the column of mercury. So I love these. They're sometimes hard to find. I got this through a scientific place because they're not something you can just find on Amazon. I keep this underneath this bench because it's out of the direct sunlight, and so that helps get a more accurate count. Sorry, babies. Everything's a little flopped over from the weight of the cloth on here, but again, better safe than sorry. I have a mix in here of stuff that wouldn't mind getting too cold, like the brassicas and the lettuces, but then I also have zinnias and things like that, so it's a mix. The other thing that I really love that I bought separate for this greenhouse is automatic vent openers. And you can see up here, that vent is just starting to open. This vent is just starting to open. This vent is just starting to open. This one doesn't have one because it doesn't fit tight, and so I can't really put a vent on that. And I just open that permanently when it gets really warm in the summer. But those save you so much time to not have to open and close vents manually all the time. And I waited a couple of years before I bought those, and they are worth absolutely every penny that you pay for them. They save so much time. I love these taller domes. So these are peppers, and peppers really don't like to be cold, and they will stunt and not grow well later if they get too cold. And so I actually have these sitting on a heat mat that's plugged in, and it's warm to the touch. It's not super, super hot, but it helps keep that soil a little bit warmer at night so that it doesn't get too cold for them. And I'll leave this on and leave them on this heat mat. And then when I put a dome over them, that's gonna, because this soil is a little bit warmer, that's gonna help hold some of that heat in. And that's gonna keep these warmer at night, even when it gets a little chilly in here. Here are a few tomatillos, and then this was a trade from a friend, an extra tomato that's a little bigger than the rest. The other big thing is buy as large as you can. Think of that big space as full of air, and that air is sensitive to temperature. The larger that airspace, the less dramatic your temperature swings are going to be. And so this greenhouse comes in a 10 by 12 and also I believe a 6 by 8. If you can afford to go bigger, always go bigger. Having that bigger airspace is going to help mitigate huge temperature swings. The other thing I don't have in here that I should have, right now I just have a dirt floor with some cardboard because I like the fact that it drains, but I really should have like cement stepping stones in here just to add mass, because that heavy mass will absorb heat during the day and then help release it at night, which also helps mitigate your temperatures. You might notice down here, I have a 55-gallon metal barrel. Here I have a 55-gallon metal barrel. And here I have a 55-gallon metal barrel. Those are all full of water. It's a nice emergency water stash as well if I ever need it. Those are in here basically just as big columns of mass. Water does not change temperature as fast as air does. And so again, it helps mitigate those big temperature swings that you're gonna have. As I said, I only stay about 5 degrees warmer than the outside temperature. And how do I know that? Because I also have a weather station. And I did not get this for a long time. I'll put a link to what this is underneath. It's an AccuRite weather station. But because this is out here, I know how cold it gets outside right here. And then inside I have a min-max thermometer, so I know how cold it gets inside at night. And so I can compare those two numbers and know how much warmer this greenhouse is to my outside temperature. This greenhouse runs about 5 degrees warmer than the outside temperature at night, with no supplemental heat. 5 degrees is not much. That means that if it's 28, that greenhouse is gonna be 33. When I first built my first little hoop house with plastic, I was under the impression that a greenhouse was just gonna be this nice, warm, beautiful space. It was gonna be room temperature all day and all night, and my plants were just gonna thrive. The reality is you're asking this thin plastic, again, to hold the cold out at night or to hold the heat out during the day. And the reality is this greenhouse might be, 35, 38 degrees at night. And then if I don't have the door open and these vents moving, it'll easily be 120 degrees by 11 o'clock in the morning. So that is a massive temperature swing. And plants don't like it when you have that much of a temperature swing. I once killed all of my tomato seedlings that I had started from seed in my laundry room because we built a little hoop house. And I was just under the impression that that hoop house was somehow magically going to keep the cold out at night. And I put all my tomato seedlings out there. I was so excited to finally have this greenhouse. And I came out in the morning and everything was frozen solid and dead as a doornail. This was when we were living in Colorado. And our nights were getting to easily in the 20s. And so that was a huge lesson. And that's my number one lesson to you is don't assume that your greenhouse is going to be dramatically warmer than your outside night temperatures. Build as big as you can. And if I were to redo this, I would love to have a window greenhouse. If I were going to redo this entirely, I would probably get the style from Costco. There is no reason the bottom 3 feet of this needs to be clear plastic. The bottom 3 feet of this could be wood, it could be stone, it could be something that would have more mass and hold more heat. I'm not putting plants in the bottom third of this greenhouse. And so there's no reason that that part needs to be clear plastic. It could very easily be wood or some other substance. The north side of this greenhouse doesn't really need to be clear, at least the wall, because again, I'm not getting much light coming in from that side, and all the light is primarily coming in, from the south. I would build it differently if I were building it from scratch. I would definitely do different doors. But the Harbor Freight greenhouse is a pretty good bang for your buck in terms of cost and in terms of that double-walled paneling. And we've gotten 10 years of use out of it. I obviously have some new things that I need to replace in terms of panels. Every year, I just resign myself that I'm going to spend a couple $100s on new plastic to replace things that are wearing out. I will put a link to the blog post that I have on this greenhouse for the description below. And then that links to a blog from a guy who did like a 6 or 7 part blog post on building one of these and the ins and outs and intricacies of reinforcing them. We probably spent a couple of $100 of extra dollars reinforcing our greenhouse in order to make sure that it wasn't going to just blow apart the first time we got any kind of wind. That's my advice. And maybe someday I will have, my dream greenhouse, which would be, half again as big as this and glass windows and yada yada. But we've gotten a huge amount of functionality out of this space. But just know that it's like having small children. You have to be incredibly diligent and you need to be checking it constantly to see whether it is too hot or too cold. Thanks for watching, Tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.